Hello and welcome to the Modern Homesteading Podcast. We're your hosts, Harold Thornborough and Rachel Jameson. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing good. I seem to be having some technical difficulties with my microphone, so
Yeah,
I'm going to sound a little bit different, and I'm going to have to sit closer to my computer and talk louder.
that's okay. I guess we'll just deal with it. It's the world we live in now, isn't it? Things just go haywire sometimes.
Yes, tech, my nemesis.
Yeah, it's everybody's. I think we all like to pretend like we got it figured out, but then as soon as you think you got it figured out, it's going to go wrong every
It
time.
seems you're wrong. It's kind of like parenting.
Yeah, just like that. Exactly. Yeah. Well, today's topic we're going to talk about is leaves. And yeah, what about them? Well, leaves with some surprising uses besides food for your homestead. And we think about our leaves and how we eat our leaves and all the leafy greens and things like that, but there's some things you can grow where you can use the leaves for a lot of other things. So we're just going to talk about a few of those things today, just for something different, because maybe we don't think about the other uses that those leaves can have. And some of these plants are edible, some aren't, but um, yeah, there's a lot of useful leaves out there, and we're just going to cover a few today and see how it goes. But I think that it gets the wheel spinning. It gets us thinking about things we can grow for uses that are just a little bit outside the box that benefit us and our homestead. And I think it's a good topic. It should be a lot of fun.
Do you remember how many we picked? Was it like 10?
No, there's like 16, I think, on there, 17, something
Really?
like
Wow.
that. We got a bunch. We'll probably go through them pretty fast, though. But before we jump into that, anything new happening on the old homestead?
Oh, we have mud season now.
Yes, it's
We
been
got
here
a
too.
thaw, and it is just mud. We still have plenty of snow, but we have lots of mud now. So I'm really glad I gave up kitchen space for a mudroom.
Yeah, it makes a difference, don't it? It's a place to get them boots off and get cleaned up a little bit before you
Oh,
go out into
right
your
now
house.
it's
Yeah.
a place where we can corral the dogs when they come in from outside.
Oh yeah, they get muddy. They probably love it too, don't they? Getting out there
Oh
and getting all
yeah,
muddy.
they think it's the best. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple months of that before it starts drying up and getting normal again. So it's not my
What about
favorite
you?
time either.
What about you?
Well, I around here it's just been did a little bit of pruning. I'm getting ready to offer the elderberry cuttings for sale on the website. So I'm getting ready to start
Oh,
cutting those
nice.
and box those up. So maybe check back in a few days and I should have those up on the website for anybody that's interested in buying some elderberry cuttings. Then we'll move on to comfrey root cuttings after that. So I try to sell a few things like that on the website so people can check that out if they're interested. Those elderberries are doing great. I mean, you took a bunch of those cuttings and they worked pretty good, didn't they? Pretty good
I would
success rate on those.
say um, I think probably 85 to 90%
Yeah,
of them.
they have a pretty good
But
success rate. Just taking
yeah,
the sticks and sticking them in the ground and they take off. I mean, they just do. They're kind of
and it's
amazing like that.
literally all I did. I
Yeah.
literally, when we came home from the conference, I literally just stabbed them into the ground the second I got out of the car.
That's literally all you got to do with them. Give them a little bit of time. They'll start rooting. And the next thing you
Yep.
know, you'll start seeing leaves pop out and then they just start growing like crazy. And that first year's a little slow, but that year two, they go crazy on year two. I mean, they'll be, several feet tall year two. So
I
they
even
really
had
blow up.
some berries the second year.
Yeah. You'll get, I think I've
Birds.
had them in the first year before, but yeah, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Depends how well they grow that first year. But yeah, it's kind of amazing how well they do. But yeah, that and yesterday I had a lot of, or 2 days ago, I guess it was, I had a lot of fun I was a guest host on a different podcast for somebody else. That was a lot of fun. I got to guest host the Orchard People podcast with Susan Poisner, and I interviewed her on her podcast about pruning trees, fruit trees, and she just released a new book on the subject. So that was a lot of fun. I got to ask her questions. We took a lot of questions. When we do live here, it's completely doing different from doing live on her show because she gets a lot of questions and it's on a radio program also. So you got a lot of them coming in from the radio, and that was a lot of fun. So I got to
That's cool.
monitor the questions and give those to her, and it was a good time. We had a good time.
Maybe
So
she's gonna steal you.
no. But I'll tell you what, I'll put a link in the show notes for anybody who wants to go over and listen to that. And she's going to send me over copies of it. So I think I'm going to post them in our members group for folks
That's
and
cool.
the members to check it out on our site. But if you want to just go over and listen to it, I'll have the link in the show notes later. Also, her book. Check out her book. I read her book. I got it last week. I read it before the interview, and if you have any questions or think you don't know everything about pruning fruit trees, which I sure didn't. I mean, I thought I had a pretty good grip on it. I mean, I knew what I was doing somewhat. I thought I did till I read that book. And then I was like, wow, it just opened my eyes to, like, I've always been recap a little bit. I was always been a late winter pruner of all my fruit trees.
Mhm.
That's going to change. I mean, I'm going to do that, but there's a completely different reason you would do that versus late summer pruning or midsummer pruning.
Yeah, I've heard
And
you can do it differently.
oh yeah, well, it's not even so much how you do it; it's why you do it.
Right.
Um, the midsummer is more about size control, where for uh, and
Okay.
food production thing. There's just a whole. She really covers all the nuances of and reasons why you would want to do it in different times and how to do it and what
Okay.
is actually taking place when you're doing it. It's a great book. I was
Well, I
really impressed by it.
expand
Really good.
my bookshelf more.
Yeah, fill up the bookshelves. It's a great one if folks want to check it out. But I'll have links to that and the episode in the show
Very
notes for
cool.
that if anybody wants to check it out. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time doing that. But boy, she has
Awesome.
like the breaks and everything in there. You got to do the radio announcement stuff and all the stuff. So it was lots of fun. Yeah, I did it. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh,
In the mid breaks, I did, not in the beginning. But yeah, it was different for me because I'm usually not very professional, especially on our podcast. I had to be a little more
yeah,
professional on that one.
we're a little laid back here.
Yeah, right. Well, I guess with that, we can just jump into our episode here about leaves. And when we think of leaves, we just often think, okay, the green part of the plant that we compost or occasionally toss in the cooking pot, right? Or fry up or make some stir fry out of, or throw in a salad or whatever. But the thing is that many leaves actually offer a wealth of unique benefits. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do with certain leaves of certain plants beyond that, beyond just the culinary uses. You can use them to improve soil health, natural pest controls, crafting material. I mean, just all kinds of things. So we'll talk about a little bit of those things today, a few of those things, and but all this working together to really support a more sustainable homestead, because the more benefit we can get from every plant, and it's kind of like that function stacking thing as well. You're getting multiple uses out of that plant, which I think is always a
Yeah,
fun thing. So we're just going
I
to
love
explore
doing
some of
that.
that. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll explore leaves. Some of them maybe some unexpected advantages. Some of them are pretty, like you get it on most of them probably, but there's definitely some that I think people don't know that you could use them for that. Um, and we'll just see. And some of them are trees, some of them are just plants, some herbs, just different things that we'll
Right.
be looking at and figuring out some new ways to put that greenery to work for us. But before we get into that, I do want to give a little disclaimer
Yeah.
because it's always really important for you to properly identify plants before using them for certain things, especially. Some leaves may be toxic if ingested, it can cause skin irritations, and some of the stuff we're going to talk about has to do with that.
Yes.
If you plan to use it in any kind of herbal remedies, it might be a good idea to consult like a qualified healthcare professional or a reputable herbal resource for safety guidelines on that, because
We
we are
are
not,
sure of
yeah, we're
those.
not that. We read. We're like you. Love to read books and read about these things. We love to research the internet and find out these things. But that's the extent of our knowledge, really, too. On some of these things, we don't. I mean, I've tried some of these things. I mean, the first thing we're going to talk about is comfrey, and I use comfrey salve all the time. I'm not afraid to use that, but
Yep.
that's for me, and I want you to care about you and do your own research on all these things. So, yeah.
For sure.
So I just wanted to put that out there because anytime you're dealing with something like this, everybody's different and everybody reacts differently to things. So you just got to be careful about that.
Yep. And we went through and added some links and stuff with some of the information for you to be able to and read and take to your professional, maybe. And some of the links aren't even about using it that way. Some of them are just fun links. Like there's a couple of craft links to some fun crafts, but
Yes.
for a few of them, I found a few articles to add to it, but yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. I was looking through some of them that you've added in there. Some pretty good information in there.
Yeah. Some fun stuff.
Well, I've done whole podcasts on this first plant. So this is nothing new to anybody that's listened to the podcast for a while, but the first one we're talking about is comfrey. comfrey leaves are beloved by permaculture enthusiasts. We love our comfrey. A lot of the reason is for these soil building properties. You know, those large leaves, they draw nutrients up from the deep. They're dynamic accumulators. They pull it up in their leaves. You do chop and drop, and just the natural dying back of those leaves into the ground, and they really help feed the soil. So, for a soil amendment, chop and drop comfrey leaves. I mean, that's top of the list for me. It's what I use around here a lot. I love to grow them around the base of trees and in my guilds and things like that. Really feed the soil. They release a little bit of nitrogen, lots of potassium, phosphorus. They really enrich the soil. So I really like using them. I also like using them in my compost to, it's kind of, it makes the compost get going quickly. It kickstarts it. Because I don't know if you've ever used comfrey leaves, what you notice is once you pick them and even just lay them on the ground, they start breaking down fast. Like within a couple of days, they're brown and they're starting to die down. And so they actually will activate compost piles really quick by that, because they start breaking down super fast, and it makes everything else kind of react around it. It's kind of neat. So I love them for that. But I also use them in herbal salves. You know, I make and sell herbal salves, comfrey salve. What you got there?
Comfrey.
Oh, you just have a jar of comfrey leaves there?
Yeah, so I thought you pulled it up. It looks,
Yeah, awesome.
right?
Yeah, I keep them around, and for that, and I make just lots of things out of them. You can use them like a poultice and use them that way, but I like to make the salves out of them. And I got to tell you, it works pretty good. I feel like for me anyway. Yeah, everybody again, your own thing there.
Yeah, there's actually a few. There's a really popular comfrey salve called Dr. Christopher's. I think he's got a few salves on the market. But yeah, so I mean, a lot of people are using it for stuff like that.
Yeah, that actually has a bunch of stuff in it besides comfrey. Even that Dr. Christopher's, yeah, I've used that before. It's actually pretty good. But I like to make my own stuff too. So yeah, I don't know if that was really surprising for anybody. We've talked about comfrey a lot, but it's not a food item really. Some people treat it that way. But I do use it as a livestock feed also. We'll mention that. I do use it as livestock feed, and it's very good for that. Rabbits love it. The quail will eat it. Chickens will eat it. You know, a lot of things will eat it. There's limitations on probably how much you should feed to them, but just like all things, moderation and
so easy to grow. So that's one of the nice parts about it.
Easy, fast growing. You can like cut it to the ground a couple, 2, 3, 4 times a year, and it'll grow back full size over and over. So good stuff. Another one that probably isn't super surprising to a lot of people is plantain. Now, a lot of folks just look as that as a common lawn weed, right? Yes. Plantain. I mean, I've got a lot of it in my yard just growing. I've never grown it as like I've never planted plantain. It just pops up in my yard everywhere, and I use it.
I've never planted it either.
You can buy the seeds. I've seen them on some seed catalogs and stuff. And
when I was doing some research for this, I found places where you can buy the seeds.
Yep, you can absolutely get the seeds, but here where I live and probably where you live, it just grows kind of everywhere. We have it all over the place. There's actually a broadleaf plantain and a skinnier leaf plantain. I use the broadleaf a lot. I mean, it's what we get here mostly in our yard. And it actually has a pretty long history of homestead and herbal uses. It's kind of a first aid leaf. Yeah, plantain leaves can be crushed and chewed into a poultice and then applied to like bee stings, mosquito bites, minor cuts. Helps soothe the irritation. I mean, that's just a common thing that's used for. But did you also know that it is a soil health indicator?
Yeah, I knew that because we have that book that you found.
Yes. Tells you kind of like reading the plants and how it tells you how the plants will tell you a lot about your soil. Plantain prefers compacted soils. Its presence in your yard really kind of signals that the soil needs some aeration or amendments to it, because it just loves kind of bad soil, really compacted, really hard, just not real nutrient rich. So if you got an area like that, you'll probably see, I'll see it growing right next to a sidewalk where you're like walking a lot, where this ground is really compacted and things like that. So it's a kind of a soil health indicator. It means kind of bad soil, really. It means it's not great soil for anything else. But hey, why not just use it for your plantain, right?
Yeah.
But you don't see it popping up in the garden much. In your garden beds and stuff, you really don't really see it popping up there.
Because and they put out like a prolific amount of seeds.
Yes.
And the seeds are actually one of the things that are used. Obviously, like we said at the beginning, be careful doing that. But they're one of the things that are used for fiber, like that psyllium.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and it doesn't really flower. Flower doesn't put like a traditional flower, but
No,
it gets this
no.
green stem with the seeds, and it's got pollen in it, and bugs really like bees and other pollinators really do like it. You'll see them laying on that. It's kind of like a green stem, but it holds the seeds. It's the flower.
Yeah,
It just doesn't. When we think of flowers, we think of something pretty. It's not nothing like that.
yeah.
But
It's more like
I
a
do
stalk
see
that
bees.
almost. It's a stalk that almost looks really similar to like a cattail, but it's super
A little
skinny.
bit like a really tiny cattail. You're right, something like that.
Yeah,
But
it
but
just gets
green, it stays
goes.
green.
There's the big leaves, and then the stalk just kind of goes straight up.
Yes.
I was looking for my book because I have one with a book. It has it on the cover of it, but I
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty common one for like herbal remedies and things that people will use for stuff. But it does, again, it has benefits beyond uh, food. Obviously, no, not too many people eat plant. You can. I mean, I know people who do eat it. Put it in salads. I've put it in a salad before. Just
Mhm.
I don't think it has to me, it's pretty bland. It doesn't really have any taste to speak of, I don't think. I mean, it's lettuce has more flavor than plantain does. But yeah, it's something you could, I mean, and you get the health benefits from it. But yeah, it has other uses, and it's just something that's probably growing in your yard, depending on where you live, that you can just go out there and pick.
Man, I don't know
The
if I've ever been in
next
a yard that didn't have it, unless they were spraying the yard.
Yeah, exactly. If you spray, you won't have it. But I'm sure in other parts of the country, it probably doesn't grow.
Maybe, yeah.
The next one is you got to be careful with
Yes,
leaves, and that's rhubarb.
yes.
Rhubarb is great. The stalks, I love rhubarb stock. I love one of my favorite pies is like a strawberry rhubarb pie.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so delicious. I love it. And that's what most people focus on.
it's that.
But
That's the stalk you're eating.
yeah,
Yes,
that's the stalk. The leaves are actually toxic,
yes. They're
and
not.
you can't eat them. But they do have some uses.
Yes,
They can be used as a natural pesticide spray. Um, they contain well, how do you pronounce it? Oxalic acid,
oxalate. Oxalate.
oxalic acid. Yeah, and you can actually boil them, dilute them, strain the liquid into a homemade spray to help deter pests and aphids. Now, have you ever done this?
I have not. I've thought about it one year when I had some heavy aphid use. In general, I try not to even spray natural sprays because I'm
Mhm.
looking for balance, but I
Yeah.
haven't tried. No.
I've read lots of blog posts about it, and I've seen lots of things about it and recipes for it, but I've actually never done it either. But we were going to put some links in the show notes there, and you can look up maybe some recipes or whatever
Yeah.
on how to do it, kind of a step by step. But from what I understand, it works. I mean, I've seen enough people write
Pretty
about it,
simple.
talk about it, to know
Yep.
that there must be something behind it, that it actually works as a natural pesticide. And it's for more things like aphids, more mild insects, things like that. I don't know that it would fight off any kind of large insects, more resilient insects. But I mean, dish soap will kill aphids, so I mean, it doesn't take a
Right.
lot. So, but this,
Yeah.
I guess, can even have to spray it in, dry it off. Maybe just the smell of that around the plants maybe would deter them and keep them away. I'm not real sure, but also, just planting them around gardens, I understand. You can lay the leaves around gardens or having it growing around gardens, and it actually can deter things like slugs and snails will actually,
Interesting.
don't like
'Cause
it, I guess.
when I cut up my rhubarb is huge. I mean, the leaves get just massive. When I cut up my rhubarb, I usually will chop the leaf off and just drop it wherever it ends up.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
and I've
and it
never
will
had
break
issues
down.
over there with bugs, so maybe that's why I haven't had issues over there with
Yeah,
bugs.
I think maybe, I'm just thinking like in a guild, rhubarb works really well because, it helps to prevent some insect damage in a
Yeah,
guild, and having it grow along with other things. But I guess if you just took the leaves and after you've harvested it and maybe created like laying them on the ground around a garden, it could really deter things getting in there. It could, I mean,
I'm gonna
according to
have
what I've read, yeah, that might be
because my
something to
leaves
try.
are huge, so that's a lot of chop and drop when I do because my leaves are just huge. So yeah,
And also the way will use comfrey a lot of times. I plant them along pathways and things like
Mhm.
that. And what you get is you get that root barrier, but you also get a shaded leaf barrier. That shaded leaf will keep things from growing or walking into your garden. Why? Rhubarb leaves could do the same thing, and they don't break down near as quick as comfrey. So they will lay there a lot longer, prevent some weed growth coming up into your garden. And it's just a natural mulch in that way that would prevent some weeds and things too. So yeah, I mean, I think these are some
Yeah.
legitimate uses for it. There is a caution thing with the composting. You want to let it completely break down in your compost, a hot compost, because it does have that acid in there, and you
Yeah.
don't really want that in your compost in a great amount. So if you're breaking it down, make sure your compost is complete and not half finished compost you're putting in your garden. But I guess also people use them for crafts.
Yeah, my sister-in-law has actually done this, and you can use the leaves to make a bird bath out of concrete. And I put a link in the show notes on how to do it, but it turns out looking really, really cool.
So do you just basically get some wet concrete in like a large container or something? You press the
Use
leaf
some
down
kind
into
of
a bowl
container.
form?
Yeah, use some kind of container to obviously keep the leaf in a shape, and then you put the concrete on top of the leaf,
Oh,
and then when it dries, the bird bath looks like. Now I've seen them two ways. The one that I posted a link for, it's actually kind of circular, but you see the whole outline of the leaf, so the bird bath looks like a leaf, which is really cool. But at
yeah,
my sister-in-law's, she actually um, shaped hers like the leaf,
that's
so it
neat.
didn't have rounded edges. She's
Yeah.
like really, she has a degree in art school, so she does all this stuff. But that's where I came up with the idea because it looks so cool what she did. But it's pretty cool and it looks really neat and it's kind of fun. You could do that,
Yeah.
and my leaves get huge, so you could have a huge bird bath. You could probably put that on something, or you could just let it sit inside your garden somewhere, and you know,
Yeah.
do a
Well, if
butterfly
you've learned,
or a bee habitat.
yeah,
Yeah.
after a few years of homesteading, I've learned that my garden is much more than just food. It's about enjoying the space. And if you can get out there and things look neat and you just enjoy being there because you got structures that you enjoy looking at, maybe a little fountain in a pond and some certain structures that just bring some energy to your garden that feels good, and I love to walk around and see the things that I've created a few things as wooden structures.
Mhm.
I have a bridge over my pond. I like that. You just see these things. So if you can put some cool bird baths like
Yeah.
that in your garden, I think that's you just I don't know, bring you more joy and just make you feel better about being in the garden, right?
Yeah, I
Well,
love my garden is not just for feeding us. It's just kind of it's an oasis.
yeah,
It's, we just go there. I literally in the mornings will pour a cup of coffee and
yep,
just walk around my yard because
me
it's my
too.
happy place. And so I
Yep.
like it to look pretty, but I mean that also serves a purpose if you're attracting
Mhm.
birds and bees, those
Yeah.
eat bugs and
They
do all
all
the good
need they
things.
all need that. Now, or is you could even take them and make miniature ponds out of them. I would think you could make that and kind
I
of
would
set it down
think,
into the ground a little bit, just kind of hollow out a little bit of a bowl in the ground and have almost like a little miniature pond and have maybe just a place for like
yeah,
frogs or whatever. That'd be kind of cool too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking about dreaming about stuff.
Well, the next one may be a little controversial. Tobacco. Now you've
Yeah,
grown tobacco leaves. You grow
I
these.
I've grown
Yeah.
tobacco 3 years in a row, and I'm probably going to start it again. It is actually a beautiful plant.
Yeah. Well, tell us what you use it for.
I use it as a capture plant. The leaves are, I can't even describe to you how sticky they are. It's like there's some kind of sticky substance, and once you touch them, then your hands are sticky, and it will attract like white flies and stuff like it. So I was having problems with white flies, so I planted it up along an edge to attract the white flies away from like my carrots and stuff.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they actually stuck to the leaves, like they landed on it and couldn't get off. It was just the weirdest thing. But you can also use it as um, you can use it to soak it out and get the nicotine, which can also be used as a spray. People do
Yeah.
that, similar to what you would have done with the rhubarb leaves. So,
Yeah.
and it's a very pretty plant. You can get shorter ones that are more like a shrub or a squatty plant, or you can get really tall ones. I've done both.
Oh, I didn't know
It's
that there were different. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know there were some different varieties that look different.
I
That's
didn't either until
cool.
I was like, what's going on here? This one's really short and this one's really tall. And yeah, but they're
Yeah,
super cool. The seeds, well, we're talking about leaves. So that's what you can use the leaves for. Um,
yeah, natural insecticide. You know, you can make teas out of it, and I guess it can deter things like aphids, caterpillars, thrips, um,
yep.
and just by soaking and straining. But here's the thing: I did read is because of the nicotine can actually attract, it can affect beneficial insects as well, and
Yeah.
not
Probably.
just deter them, but cause them harm. And so you kind of have to be careful where you're using it or why you're using it. If you really have a problem, might be a time to use it, but just having the leaves, even just scattered dried tobacco leaves around a perimeter of your garden, I guess can help repel certain critters and, and just not just insects, but actually like other things as well. So
Now, I
just
never had anything try
animals.
to consume it, which was
Yeah.
interesting because
I
usually
guess,
in plants you have something trying to eat it.
yeah, I guess just because they pick up on the mild toxicity of it that they don't want to come around it or be, so it can actually deter animals away from your small animals and stuff away from your garden. So
But they're really pretty. I didn't know until you posted this that people use it for crafts, so I had to Google it, and there
yeah,
was some pretty interesting
yeah, all
things. And
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
that's the link that's there. There was some crafts people made, like tables and
Mhm.
I
And they would
don't
even make things that you like, say you make some kind of a decorative craft out of it that you could actually put outside to deter, like, for deter certain things even around a porch or a back, a
know
deck or
if
something
there's
like that.
mosquitoes.
What's that? Deer?
I said, I wonder if there's mosquitoes.
Oh, mosquitoes. I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, it has some uses like that. But again, we got a link in the show notes that it has some things in there that you can get some
Yeah,
ideas
I would
from.
say the size of it, if anybody wants to plant it, is probably about the size of a full-grown mullein. So they're pretty big.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
decent size, yeah. Half the size of a rhubarb leaf probably, would you say?
Yeah, they're long and skinny.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
similar, I would say it's really similar to a
Slightly bigger than comfrey.
yeah, yeah. The leaves are like that, kind of shaped
Yeah,
similar to that.
yeah.
Yep.
I've actually never grown it. I threatened to a few times. I've never got around to it yet. I'd
Well,
like to actually.
yeah, I was actually surprised I could get it to grow this far north, but I did.
Yeah, that's nice. Next one's a pretty common one. A lot of people grow it, and once you start growing it, you can't stop growing it because it won't let you. And that's mint. Mint is
We
known
joked
for its vigorous growth. It will take over an area. Be careful where you plant it. Best to use a pot. I'm not very smart when I first planted it, and it's growing. Well, I planted it beside a cherry tree as kind of a guild in the ground, and there's a raised bed right beside that cherry tree. Well, I put one little root section in the ground right by this cherry tree,
oh no.
and it spread and took over an entire raised bed, half the
Hmm.
pathway.
Yeah.
If I let it, it would just take over my entire homestead.
So
It's so aggressive.
I started with mine in a pot, but it jumped out of the pot.
Yeah, you got to be careful. It is
It is
vigorous.
everywhere. And in fact, we joked around because I moved like 300. I don't even know how many plants. It's probably more than 300 plants from our other house. And my husband said, "Hey, are you going to grab mint?" And I said, "I don't think I have to purposely grab mint. I'm pretty sure we brought it on accident."
It'll be in some soil somewhere.
It'll be
Yeah, it'll
there.
just show
It'll be
up.
there. Guaranteed.
It,
That
it
stuff
hits the
just
ride.
travels underground. It's got like these underground runners that just go
Yeah,
everywhere.
I have mulch pathways beside that cherry tree, and I will see mint popping up 10 feet away from that cherry tree, and I'll go to pull it up, and it'll pull a big old like runner up all the way back, and like a 10-foot long runner all the way back. And I'm like, what in the world? It's crazy. Stuff is just aggressive. It's a pretty
So
amazing.
I've had people
Yeah.
tell me they can't grow it, and I'm
Oh,
just
amazing. Yeah.
mind blown over
I
that.
made the horrible mistake one time of putting it in an aquaponics, a chop and flip aquaponics system.
Oh,
Completely. I mean, I put one little plant in, completely took over the aquaponics system, and it found its way down through up through the pipes, and I mean, it was just
oh my gosh!
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had to
it's
completely rip the
impressive.
entire thing apart, and I'm pulling it out, and its roots were just in everything, everything. It was amazing.
It's awful.
It had rat.
We have tried to remediate, like we've tried pulling it. We've tried to kill it. It's
Well,
Yeah.
there's all the bad stuff about mint. Let's talk about the good stuff. Well, it's delicious in tea for
Oh
one
yeah,
thing.
it is.
We're not
It's
talking
amazing.
about food and drink here so much, but it's actually a pest deterrent, and I
Mhm.
do believe that. I've seen evidence of that. It's like it does. I don't see the beds it's growing next to. I don't have really any pest pressure whatsoever.
Yeah.
It wards off things like ants, mosquitoes, flies. You just see that. It's I mean, I know. I actually will bring it in the house and little pots of it to keep ants out of the house. Have you ever done that? It works. I mean, I
So
bring little mint
yeah,
plants
we
in
tried
pots.
planting. I need to try it again, but we tried planting a bunch of it around the perimeter of my mom's house. And she was one of the people, I don't know why, but they couldn't grow. They
Yeah,
have a lot of sand. But yeah, I've heard of that. And I've
I've
also
used and
seen people
I
put sachets of it like
yep.
in drawers.
I've even like soaked it in and then put it in a spray bottle and get that minty
Mhm.
water and then spray that around like baseboards and stuff where you start having like ants problems. They'll always seems like when
Yeah.
they come in, they'll be around a baseboard or something. Spray it kind of along there, the water, and it will put enough smell in there and it deters them a little bit. So yeah, I find that does work. It is a great companion plant for things like cabbage, kale, tomatoes. And again, it masks the smell of those crops from pests that would generally want to go after
Right.
those crops. Um, but like I said, pretty sealed off pot. You don't want to just put it in the ground beside those because it'll take over the bed. So be careful. Um, but yeah, it can actually be made as a homemade cleaning solution. And a lot of people will use that in vinegar, kind of pulls away from the vinegar smell to have more of a mint smell,
Yeah.
just naturally sense it. I guess it's a mild antiseptic cleaner for countertops and floors as well. I mean, I didn't really use
Mhm.
it for that, but doing a little research, found that out. Plus, you can use it in soaps. If you make soaps, you can put some mint in there to give it that minty smell in a soap. That's awesome.
Cooling. I know
Yeah.
people use it as like a hydrosol. So they literally just put it in water just for that cooling feeling in the
Mhm.
summer, like in a spray bottle to spray yourself, and it just kind of cooling and refreshing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, you put a link in for it says 12 uses for mint leaves for health and home. So yeah, there's more uses yet beyond that, but those were just some of the ones I use it for and that we know about right off the top of our head. So great. It's a great plant to grow. Just grow with caution. I mean, I couldn't imagine not having it on my homestead. I mean, I like having it,
yeah,
but I don't like having it where I have it. Let's put it
yeah. I
that
think
way.
if I purposefully put it in my garden again, which I will, I'm gonna put it in a pot on something that isn't soil underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be careful.
Because it went through
Um,
the hole in the bottom of the pot. So I just have to avoid that happening again.
It just amazes me as aggressive as it is that the entire world isn't just covered in it because I don't know what could stop it in the wild.
But you know that it is a pollinator too. I mean, the bees and everything love
Yeah,
it.
they
They
do.
love
You're right.
it. It definitely attracts good insects.
The next one I become a real fan of in the last couple of years,
Mhm.
and that's mullein. It's just that tall, fuzzy plant you see growing in the wild all over the place, but you can actually grow it on your homestead on purpose. And it's
Yes.
been traditionally used in herbal medicine for centuries for respiratory support. And I tell you, I
Mhm.
until I ever did that the first time, I never realized just how good it works. I mean,
It works pretty good.
honestly, again, use caution, check with your doctor, whatever. We're not saying do it. I've said I've done it, and it's worked better than prescription stuff that I've used for something like that. I mean, it's kind of amazing. But
And that's the leaf and the
yeah,
yeah. It's
it's
kind of
it.
like a scratchy,
Mhm.
pokey leaf, but it's like a sage green. You'll know them if you see them. They get the first year they're actually just a rosette, and then the second year they're really tall and they get the yellow flowers on the top.
We'll let you search some blog posts on the proper preparation for that,
Yep.
teas, oils, things like that, and how to use it. Because I don't want to get into that. Like I said, it's not
Yep.
my thing, but I've done
You
it and it
should. Yep.
works. But you go to other places that are more professional about that and understand it a little bit better, and
Yep.
they can show you how to do it properly and reap the benefits in as a remedy like that because it does work for me. It does anyway. This was I thought was kind of funny and interesting. A DIY torch. You can actually take the tall
Oh,
flower stalk and dry and soak in wax, and it can be used like a torch because you could see that too, the way they're shaped and stuff. Use like a torch. I just thought that was kind of funny to be able to use it
it
like
makes
that.
sense because that flower pod is
Yeah,
pretty tall. And if you
Yeah,
let
it
them
is.
dry out, it's definitely a long torch.
It'd be something cool to do with, like, some kids or something to show them how that would work and walk around. It'd just be a fun little project. A soil conditioner, no surprise there. The large leaves can be
Yes.
chopped and laid on top of soil, and they'll add organic matter as they decompose, and they're rich in it. They have a lot
Mhm.
of mineral and nutrients in that plant, so it's just great in that way. So nothing maybe real surprising there, but very beneficial,
It's
and
it's one
so
of those plants that has like a really long, deep taproot. So it brings
yeah,
all that up, puts it in its leaves.
yeah, another dynamic
Grows in,
accumulator. Yeah.
it grows in like disturbed soil and all that kind of stuff. So it's just great for your soil.
Yeah, the
I
next
put a
one's a
link there.
oh,
I think that link is. I tried to make all of these links like really legit links. If
using
they were,
universities and legit
yeah,
websites,
if they
yeah,
were
things like
about
that.
medical stuff, I tried to use like university or medical
Yeah,
people.
right.
So, yep.
Absolutely. The next one is a tree leaf, and that's
Hmm.
willow. Um, and you often see that in wetter areas, along streams, ponds, things like that. But you can grow them in your yard. I mean, I've just seen them out in the middle of a yard. Someone plants one, they'll grow. They'll search for water. They love water. Um, the bark, we know the bark has a lot of potential, but the leaves also. We can use the bark and the leaves contain how do you pronounce that?
Oh man,
Salicylic acid, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm not real
don't
sure.
ask me. Salic acid? I don't know.
Something like that, which can encourage root growth. So it can be used as a root
Yeah.
hormone. But you can chop up the leaves and the branches and things like that and
Oh,
add them to some water, and it can be used for a rooting solution. But people also use them as crafting material. Willow branches, leaves, and bark can all be used in weaving baskets, garden trellises, simple crafts, and you can use the leaves in that as well. They've just got these really long, useful leaves that you can just use for things. You could definitely weave them into like a small basket or something if you wanted to. Livestock feed. It's a very popular use for that. I mean, I think of mulberry and comfrey when I think of leaves feeding livestock, but
really?
absolutely willow is one of those as well that they
Yeah,
like.
and I think especially goats. And the one thing nice about willow is everybody. If you've ever had a willow tree, you know that you can cut it and then it just keeps coming. And that's
Yeah,
why it's such a great thing for feed because it just keeps coming.
it's one of those trees you can coppice and
Yeah,
it grows right back. Yeah, and so that's why a lot of people use it for crafting materials. The willow sticks because you can keep them bush like almost and just have these long sticks, willow sticks. And they're real flexible and they're great for that. But in the leaves, though, the leaves are just, yeah, goats, rabbits, some other animals really like them. And just tons of biomass off these trees. I mean, there's so much leaf hanging off these
so much
that,
leaf there.
yeah, they're just, chopping them, dropping them. There's just so much, or even just using your compost. Uh, it's a lot of biomass. So they're really useful for their biomass for sure. Just so much stuff there. But that's willow. Now, the next one, I don't know a lot about, but I wanted to put something in here for our southern friends, Rachel. Those
I
folks
love.
around 8 to 11 zone.
I actually buy this, but I can't grow it.
Yeah, me neither. Eucalyptus is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And like I said, it can be grown in zones 8 through 11. So it's definitely more south than us, but it has a lot of benefits if you're able
Mhm.
to grow it. Aromatherapy, of course. Just hanging eucalyptus leaves in your house or in a shower or something like that, you almost get like this spa-like aroma in it. The scent is it'll just open up your head and it'll just, it just smells just great. We'll buy like the essential oils with it, the
Yeah.
eucalyptus and use it all the time. So you could actually make your own oils like that and stuff. Um, Again, you could add that to soaps and lotions and salves and all kinds of stuff. And I guess it has antibacterial and decongestant properties, microbial properties
I
for
didn't
sinus
know.
clearing.
Cool.
Yeah, evidently. I mean, I looked up a few things. So a lot of people use it during cold and flu season. And go ahead.
So you could boil it maybe and like use it in some kind of countertop spray or something like that.
Maybe. Yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, that could be. You might want to do some research
Okay,
for that.
I was wondering about that. Somebody's gonna have to search that up.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's another one that can be used as a natural insect repellent because it's just a strong odor. It puts out a really strong scent, which I guess deters things like mosquitoes and some other bugs as well. But so it's used a lot. Just the
Mhm.
oils, I think a lot of times people use it for that. And I guess it can be used in ornamental and decorative. I don't really never seen it used that way, but I guess people do use them for
Oh,
things in wreaths and bouquets and floral arrangements. You see it, do you?
yeah, and I've actually, my mom and I used to get into, we used to make wreaths for people. We didn't sell them. We just made a bunch of them for gifts, and we always had eucalyptus in them. So
Well, it would give it a nice
yeah,
scent if you're hanging it up too,
yeah,
I guess.
it does. Gives it a
Yeah.
really nice scent.
Yeah. So you actually included another link on some benefits and ways to use them. So folks
Yeah,
can dive into that link if they want to see some more details on that. But yeah, I think it's a great one and I wish I could grow it. I guess nothing's impossible,
right.
but
Yeah.
I
How
try
much
to
time
avoid the
do you
things.
want
Yeah,
to
I don't
do
grow oranges or eucalyptus in my yard, so I try to avoid the hard stuff. Um, Grape leaves. I find grape leaves is another one we can grow, and I do use those for things other than feed. We'd use them for livestock feed though.
I did not
Livestock
know that until I
rabbits
was.
will eat them. Yeah, yeah, my
That's
rabbits will eat them. Chickens, I guess, will tear into them. But the thing I use them most for, well, all beside probably mulch or compost, would be crisping pickles. I put
yes,
I put them in my when I'm canning pickles, I place a grape leaf in every jar and it kind of helps with retain the crispness of the pickles because of the tannins in the grape leaves. They help
right.
with that. So they'll keep them good and a little longer. Now, the biggest problem I ever have though is cooking pickles too long. Like a lot of people don't. They just what do you call that when you just put the hot water in and they seal
Ferment.
it?
You
I'm
ferment
sorry.
them.
Well,
Ferment.
fermenting, but even if you're canning them, if you don't boil them, you just take the boiling water and one
Oh, that's called open kettle canning.
open kettle canning. It's not the recommended
No,
way
it's
to
not.
do it. But a lot of people do that. And then I think in that situation, which I do that, the grape leaves actually do work really well. I think when
Okay.
you cook, when you actually put them, to me, there's almost nothing that'll keep a pickle crisp if you overcook them. Obviously,
Yeah.
if you follow the recommended methods of doing pickles, I don't think that you're going to be able to keep them crisp, no matter what you do. But if you do it the way I do it, the leaves actually do work. Putting a grape leaf in there,
Hmm.
um, because they're a pretty decent sized leaf. They don't get huge, but there's a lot of them. You can use them as a weed suppressor, as a mulch. And again, like livestock feed, I do use them for that. But that's just those are maybe some things maybe you didn't know about grape leaves. And now you have a recipe in here that pickled grape leaf recipe,
Yes.
fermented.
You just eat the leaf.
Didn't
Yeah.
even
So a
know
lot of
people ate the
people,
leaves.
a lot of different cultures use the grape leaves as a wrap, and you can pickle those or ferment. This is actually not pickled. This they call it pickled, but it's fermented.
Yeah,
And then you can use that in different recipes. And yeah,
I did not. That's a new one on me, and that I don't know. I wonder what that would taste like. I'm gonna have to maybe try that. I don't know. Sounds interesting. I like fermented stuff. But
I
I
a lot
can't
of people,
imagine a grape leaf tasting great. I don't know, but maybe it does.
it's similar to like when you eat a cabbage roll. You can make
Really?
the fermented, and you put stuff in it, and you can stuff it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty good.
Interesting. Oh,
Yeah,
you actually have had them then. You've ate them,
yeah,
the grape leaves. Oh, wow. Okay. I'll
yep,
have to maybe look into that then. That sounds interesting. I always
yeah.
have a lot of them. A lot of them. I mean, I have a
You
lot of
know,
grape leaves.
yeah. I had to kind of hunt for them because we didn't have I didn't have access to them, so it was really hard for me to find them. And so when I did, I would get a bunch of them, and then I would ferment them. But yeah,
Interesting. I'll have to try
and
that.
definitely some other things for fermenting, but we're getting to those.
The next thing is mulberry. I've done a whole podcast episode on mulberry one time, and it included the leaves, but it's one we have to mention here because it's one of my favorite things to grow on this homestead. I love mulberry for a lot of reasons, but the leaves themselves, though, are a food for silkworms, and silkworms have a lot of benefits. Obviously, silk production, but also as a feed for small like chickens and
I
things like that.
never thought, and mulberry is one of my favorite trees, and I have lots of it. And now I'm like, maybe I need to get some silkworms.
Yeah, and it's just something that Yeah, I mean, you could feed it to your livestock. Plus, just the livestock love to eat the leaves, right? I mean, chickens, rabbits, goats, quail
Yeah.
even eat my mulberry leaves. They love the mulberry leaves. The one tree I have, I mean, I have a few trees, but there's this one I planted right next to my rabbit pens, just so I can feed them off of
Oh,
that tree.
no.
I mean, it's
Make it
solely
easier.
for feeding the rabbits, but that's what that tree is about. I keep that tree chopped way down low so I can just have all the leaves right there real close, and I just feed them constantly with it. So it's a great source of protein, and other things as well for your small livestock. It's a nutrient rich compost, so it works great. I mean, just take those leaves and add them to your compost. They'll add a lot to it. They just It's a great tree to have on your property, but it can be a messy tree. So always be thinking about where you're putting a mulberry tree.
Yes. Ours
But
is
the
pretty.
leaves themselves, now the leaves can be eaten. We've talked about that. You said that I think you've eaten them before. I never eat them.
I have. I
But
have dehydrated them and put them. I made a greens powder instead of buying a greens powder for my smoothies.
Mhm.
I made one, and it was mulberry leaves. Um,
Okay, yeah.
I'm currently trying to breed, or well, I tried to. We'll see if it worked. Some male mulberries
No, yeah.
because solely for this purpose
Yep.
because they don't drop berries.
Right. That's what I have back there by the rabbit pen. It's a male and it doesn't have berries,
Yeah,
and I just use it solely for the leaf to feed
right.
the animals, and it works really, really well. So it's a good one. But again, rearing some silkworms. You want to,
Yeah,
raise some silkworms for whatever purposes. It's, feed for your animals, or for the soap production if you want to get into that. I mean, it could be an interesting little
that would
venture.
be interesting. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, but for some people who's into that,
Yeah.
if you're into that, it'd be
I
cool.
found this really. I found a really interesting article on. I think it was PubMed, something like that. But basically, talking about using it as a supplementary feed for livestock, and they did a bunch of research on this. So the research is already done. So if anybody wants to look that up, there's the link.
Did you ever see the picture of where my mulberry tree became a cucumber tree?
Yes.
I had a picture, and I had a trellis right beside that mulberry tree, and I was growing cucumbers on the trellis. Well, I just let it kind of go wherever it wanted to go. Well, anyway, it had walked the vines had stretched over to that mulberry tree and started growing up into this mulberry tree, and I had cucumbers hanging down all over this mulberry tree,
That's
just
so
hanging
cool.
down. So I just had I mean, there was probably 100 cucumbers hanging out of this mulberry tree. So I had me a cucumber tree. It was kind of interesting.
I love it. I love it.
It worked. It made its own little trellis, and yeah, just it was just the funniest thing to see them hanging up there like that. And they grew. I'm gonna tell you what, some of the best cucumbers I had came out of that tree because I don't know, it just shaded it right. It had the right amount of sunlight, and it was just the way it was
Ah,
trellising it and keeping it up. It did a fantastic job of holding them, and I
well,
just
maybe
let
you're
it
not.
go all year. Yeah, it was a neat little thing. Well, our next thing is a pretty common one, yarrow.
Yes.
Um, it can grow wild, but a lot of people grow it on their homesteads. I grow some. Matter of fact, I have
Mhm.
some in a pot in my window seal in there in the kitchen right now, growing. Um, and they got the little feathery leaves, but they have medicinal qualities,
Mhm.
and so it's a good garden helper as well. So you can go through some of these if you want. You probably use it more than I do.
Well, I haven't. I have grown it purposefully, but then I also have it wild, so you can get different colors, which is kind of nice if you're going for some different colors
Mhm.
on your homestead, and you have to buy the. I think wild, it's white, might be yellow too, but you can get all sorts of colors if you get the seeds. But historically, it's been used for poultices, like on cuts and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's been used for mosquito bites. You can use it as a mosquito repellent.
I even read on the for slowing for like bleeding and stuff that it can be, they call it the bleed plant. Like it can be put in your nose to stop a nosebleed. I'd never heard that before, but I did a little study on that, and I was like, well, that's interesting. They could be used like that.
That is interesting. Yeah. And so the other thing, you can use it as a compost accelerator. So
Hmm.
it's got lots of greens to it, and it has a lot of nitrogen in it. So
Hmm.
um, that works if you need the nitrogen. And of course, it's a pollinator. The birds
Yeah.
or the bees and stuff just love it. The flower is it's not your typical flower. It's like multi flowers on the head of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
It's hard to talk about the leaves and not talk about the flowers also. I mean, we're really about the leaves, but yeah, it's obviously it's all
the little feathery leaves look super delicate, but they're really not, and they're very plentiful because this flower gets, at least here wild, it gets pretty tall. So there's a lot more leaf than there is flowers,
yeah.
and people use it in soap
Hmm.
for skin irritants and stuff like that. So if you have like irritated skin from something, people will put it in soap, and you can use it as a
Yeah,
color.
they'll put like chop the plants up and put them in soap, and you'll actually get that like speckled look throughout the soap and stuff.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I've seen that
You
used
can do
like
that with a
that.
lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
and those leaves are like, where a lot of plants in the wild, the leaves are kind of a muted green, like a sagey muted green. But with the yarrow, at least my experience, it's like this really bright green. So I could
Mhm.
see using it for a color too.
I think comfrey does that too. It gives it almost like a green glow, like a light green glow
Yeah,
when you put it in things. Like you can add it to soap and stuff as well too.
but
I've
we
done
use
that.
it as a natural insect. I use it as a natural insect repellent because the mosquitoes out here at the back of our pond can get pretty vicious, and it actually works really well. And what I did was I just stuffed the jar full of a bunch of the leaves and poured alcohol over it and let it sit for 6 or 8 weeks and strained it and stuck it in a spray bottle, and I used that, and
You use it
that's,
on your skin. I mean, use it on you to
yeah, I use
repel.
it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and on my clothing or whatever that I'm wearing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I put directions. I put a link for somebody's uh, blog that had instructions on how to do that. But yeah,
Nice. Yeah, very good. The next one is nettle, stinging nettle. A lot of people are intimidated by it. I
well,
was at one point, like when I used to somebody would talk when I first heard about eating stinging nettle, I was like, "Are you crazy?" I've walked through a woods in a pair of shorts before and couldn't hardly stand it. Couldn't imagine eating that, but it does when you cook it. That all goes away, obviously, when you boil it. Um, but its leaves are a powerhouse for your garden. They really
oh,
are.
very
And you can make a fertilizer tea out of them. You just steep
yes.
the nettle leaves in water for a few days, and you can make a tea out of it and water your plants. And it's just, again, wear some gloves when you're harvesting it. It's very nasty if you get that on your skin uh, when it's got those
Oh,
little.
it's
Oh, it'll
yeah,
irritate you. Yeah, bad.
when it stings you, which is exactly what it feels like. You know it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, it's a great fiber source. It's actually the fibers are used to make a fabric that's similar to linen, which I
Isn't
didn't
that
actually know
crazy?
that, but that's cool. I don't know how that works, but what somebody can look up the links and find out about that, and if you're interested in something like that. But I imagine it's something like hemp or something like that, the way it would be used, because it's
Yeah,
similar, I think,
I
to
actually,
fiber.
it's not the leaves so much with that as the stem. Yeah,
Probably more so, yeah.
but the leaves,
Um,
I mean, people use nettle leaves and soups and everything too. So the leaves are
yeah.
amazing.
Again, you can't talk about the leaves without talking about the flowers and the rest of the plant, but it does attract pollinators. So the
Mhm.
leaves are a side benefit to that, obviously, but you get the pollinator benefits from that as well. But it has a really high mineral content. So a lot of people like to do
Yes.
oils and soaps and things like that out of it because it just has a lot of
Yeah.
benefits for you in those things. So
Well,
it's
you
really
can
good.
use it. It's another one of those that you can use for a livestock feed because
Yep.
it's so mineral
Yep.
rich.
Absolutely.
Yes, and you
Yeah.
can add it, like you said, to compost and everything. So I feel like it's a really versatile plant, but you just might, if you decide to grow it, you might just want to be careful where you put it.
Yeah, if you're gonna have to be walking through it or by it all the time, you don't wanna put it there because, it'll get you. It'll get your arms and your legs, it'll get you, and it'll sting a little bit. But yeah, it's got some, you put some links in here that, of, nettles for textiles, um, pelleted stinging nettle, and that's interesting. You could pelletize it,
Yeah,
for
I've seen
feed.
people pelletize it for feed.
Yeah, different things there. So yeah, I mean, it's got and see functions for lactating dairy cows, so a feed for them as well has some benefits. So just some different links you put in that I thought were interesting that so that folks can check out.
It's one of the ones I actually want to grow a lot here.
Yeah. Now the next one, it's a leaf, I guess, technically aloe. But I have aloe right here in my house right now growing. And my grandson was here, what was it, not too long ago. And I can't remember what happened. He did something, and did he burn himself a little bit or something? I can't remember now what happened, but he's like, "Do you have any of that aloe, Papaw?" Because
Yes,
we used it on a mosquito bite or something one time, and it worked for him. And now he thinks it's good for everything, which is kind of funny. He wants it for everything now.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's a succulent. The leaves are really thick. They got these fleshy blades, but it has this gel inside. If anybody's ever used it, you just squirt the gel out, and it's the aloe, right? And it's that soothing gel. We have it in our kitchen growing right now, and it's just great for everything. If
I
you
think it's
burn
great
yourself,
to grow. Yeah.
if you burn yourself on a pan or something, and you put aloe on it instantly, it's kind of a miracle. It really is. It takes the burn out almost instantly, and it may not even turn red when it's all said and done. It will just stop it. It's
Yeah.
kind of amazing. It's like how it works, who knows, but it's amazing. I guess folks just use it as a natural moisturizer. You can blend an aloe gel and with oils or beeswax and mix salves and lotions and creams and use it that way. So it can be used like that. It's easy to multiply if you're like for propagation. I know ours sets off these little babies all in the pot, all around it all the time. Now, I'm kind of funny like this because houseplants are great if you're a disciplined person. I'm not when it comes to houseplants. I tend to just forget about them.
But I
And
think aloe thrives on that, doesn't it?
well, it needs a lot of water. I have to give mine a lot of water, it seems like.
Okay.
So I take it outside as soon as it's nice enough outside, and I transplant it back to a pot, bring it back in the house for the winter. But even though it's nice to keep in a house, I just don't like thinking about things in the house. I just take them outside where I don't have to worry about them. But what I figured out about this plant, it's kind of weird because it does grow really well in just a window or whatever, is it really doesn't like that full, hot, all day sun. You'd think being a succulent, it would, but it doesn't. And I've tried it in different locations. I've had it like out in the garden, full sun, and it survives, but it just looks like it struggles all summer. I'll move
Okay.
it to where it gets maybe half day shade. It does a lot better, a lot better.
Yeah.
So it just depends on where you put it, but I like moving it in and out like that. So, but I guess, it's
Because
a hydrating. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I should try that because I've killed my last two.
I've killed them in the house too. I've had this plant I've had now. It's a big one, and I've planted it back and forth for a couple, 2 or 3 years now. But I actually had a few before that, and I just kept killing them every year. I'd forget to take care of them in the house; they die, and I had bad luck with them. And this one's been working out really well for a few years now. Hydrating gel. It can be a hydrating gel, obviously, and just has lots of skin loving nutrients in it. So, yeah, use it for soaps and just all kinds of things. It's something good to have on your homestead. It's a great one. You want to take the next one? Borage?
Yeah, the next one is borage. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways.
Yeah, this plant grows super easy, and once you have it in your garden, it actually can kind of take it over if you let it, especially if you let it go to seed. I might know this from experience, but it gets pretty tall. It looks similar to comfrey, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
It gets like little blue flowers on it once it
Mhm.
gets, I don't know, 2.5 to 3 feet tall. But it's kind of spiny. It's a little bit prickly, but it grows really quickly, and you can use those leaves as nitrogen. Like they dry up
Yeah.
very similar to how comfrey dries up. So I was planting it at the end of rows with comfrey and just kind of using it that way.
Mhm.
But it also is it really attracts a lot of bees. The bees absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yep. They do.
And I used it for companion planting near my, let me see, what did I have it next to? I had it next to tomatoes and strawberries.
Yeah, I've heard it does good with squash and
Yep.
tomatoes. Yeah, I've heard it actually deters pests like tomato hornworm, which I've actually had an issue with
Yeah,
those a couple times. So yeah.
yeah, so I had planted it, but like I said, once it goes to seed, it's definitely very prolific. So it can take over, but I just loved it, and you can use it. You can use it some other ways. There's some medicinal benefits, so I put a link in there if people want to use it medicinally. People use the flowers for things as well, but we're talking about the leaves.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next one I actually haven't grown, so I'm gonna let you do this one too, and that's horseradish.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
you've
So
grown
that's
it. I
another one
don't
of
grow it.
those plants that will take over if you let it. It is, and it gets like a really deep root, and that's the horseradish part. But the
Hmm.
leaves are, I would say they're probably about the same size as a comfrey leaf, but they're
Hmm.
shiny.
Yeah.
And you can use those in fermenting as well. So you can use those or grape leaves or oak leaves in ferments. They all have that tannin to make everything kind of crunchy. So that is what I have used in my pickles before to make them crunchy. But you can also use it as a fungicide. So you can chop it up and, make it into a sauce and use it as a fungicide.
Did you grow that from a seed, or did you bring in a plant, or what did you do?
No, I got a cutting from a friend. So
Okay.
basically, cutting is,
So it's perennial.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
even
Oh
here.
wow. Okay. I'm gonna
Oh,
try. I need to bring that on the homestead. I definitely do.
yeah, and horseradish itself. I mean, we're talking about the leaf, but horseradish itself, people use it a lot of times if they get stuffed up because it's spicy.
Yeah.
But basically, it'll grow big enough. It kind of spreads, and then you can just take a cutting off of it and plant it, and it gets, of course, that really long taproot, which is that horseradish part.
Hmm.
But I use it mostly for fermenting, and then we don't use a ton of horseradish around here. But if you want it, you got it.
Yeah.
So there's lots of, again, it's another one of those dynamic accumulators because it goes deep. So the leaves have some nutrition in them, and you can compost them. And
Yeah. Yeah, evidently, it's like a grape leaf too that has the tannins. You can actually use it to make crunchy pickles as well, which I did not know that.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
interesting.
and they're really big. So even when my plant was pretty small and I was making a lot of pickles, I had enough to do it. But I've
So
also
you
used
you
you
used them
can
in
use
pickles.
oak leaves too. You can use oak
Yeah.
leaves.
Yeah. Anything that's heavy in the tannins you could use, but I didn't
Yeah,
realize
or
the horseradish
black
leaf was one of
tea.
those.
People use black tea as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Good
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Now the next one's a great smelling flower, and that's lavender. We know them for their flowers, and
We
they get
do.
all the attention. But the leaves also they're aromatic as well.
Pretty
And
smelly.
yeah, yeah. So dried lavender leaves and stems can be added to sachets and potpourris and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff to kind of add that flavor. I guess you could put them in wreaths and other stuff like that too, and it really help with that aroma. But I guess they're an insect repellent. I mean, I've grown them enough, around things. I've grown it quite a bit too. Um,
Hmm.
and I never done this. Though, just scattered the crushed leaves in areas deter moths and other pests. I think that's interesting. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
it's why people put them in drawers, like to keep moths out of their
Okay,
stores.
I'd never heard that, but that would
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, so might try that. You can, we were not talking about food, but of course they're used in teas and
Oh yes,
infusions.
of course.
Um, it's famous for that. But it's a calming fragrance, just to have lavender. I mean, people buy the essential oils and put them in the whatever they're called, the things that make the smell. What do you call that? The water thing,
Diffuser.
the diffuser. That's the word I'm looking for. They put them in the diffusers. You get that lavender smell because it's a calming fragrance. But to
It
have
is.
the actual plants is nice. If you can just have the plants growing. I've grown them in the house before. We've had some pots of them sitting in the house before in a window seal, and yeah, it's nice. But I guess they are a mild antiseptic as well. So you can for
I
skin and
didn't
things
know
like
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
just found
I
a
didn't
couple
know
blog
that.
posts on that. So that's interesting. So
Yeah, and
yes,
I use it. We've actually used it on burns.
really
Yeah, like a sunburn, or you burn yourself like on a pot.
interesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's actually one of those things. My husband is not really into natural remedies as much as I do. He gets stuck doing it because it's what we have. But he's the first one that will go, "Oh, where's that lavender? I burnt myself.
Really, it
Where's that?"
works so well. He wants it now, huh? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yep,
calendula is another one.
this is one of my favorites. I love it.
Really, we'll talk about it. Go ahead.
I grow it purposefully, and it's another one of those. I use the flowers more than I probably use the leaves, but it definitely attracts all of the all of the good things, all of the
Hmm.
good. And but you can use it too for, again, you can use the whole plant for like skin issues. People put this all the time in like salves and soaps and tinctures and all that kind of stuff, and they'll put it on their skin. and people use it for dyes, which I probably shouldn't have included that because that's more the flower part. But
Yeah, well, I think the yellow, yeah, it makes like a yellow. I think the leaves get thrown in there too. Yeah.
yeah, and then like I said, the skin soothing, that is one of the biggest things. I think people use it a lot. You see it in some of the natural homemade body body butters, blah, body butters, or like balms that people use
Hmm.
for like diaper rash and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen people use it for that. Obviously, you're going to want to look all that up and go somewhere else for the medical information because that's a baby and you got to be careful. But people use it a lot, mostly for skin stuff. It's
Yeah,
just
I've seen it in
really,
soaps a lot, and you always see the actual like pieces of it in the soap. Like they'll leave
yeah,
like the leaves and the flower and parts of it in there, and it's not
yeah,
just the
and it's
oil.
a great flower for the garden because it attracts so many pollinators. It's related to marigold. It's that marigold family.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
that you would use marigold for.
yeah. Well, I think that's the one we wrapped it up with. Now, there's no doubt there is a lot of other leaves out there that can be
Oh
used
yeah,
for just a lot of things. But these are just some common ones. Some of them you've used, some of them I've used, some of them are just more common and you've heard of them before that we know that they're used. But yeah, they don't have to be just used for, you don't have to just grow things to eat. You can grow things for other reasons. There's a lot of things you can grow that are fun to grow that have plenty purposes for your homestead. So I think we need to get maybe in the habit of thinking beyond just food when we grow things. We tend to just think gardening, food, but it can be gardening for soil health, gardening for herbal remedies, gardening for animals, livestock feed, gardening for all the crafts, even, gardening for craft work. Just all these things you can consider when you're gardening. There's a lot of things you can grow for a whole lot of reasons besides just food for you. And I think that's fun. And it gives your homestead a little bit more of a sustainable value, self-sufficiency, and yeah, it just takes us to a kind of another level on our homestead where we're just beyond just thinking about our stomachs all the time.
yeah.
Because
And especially on a small homestead, it gives you more uses for that small acreage.
yeah, and if you're doing permaculture, it's so easy just to incorporate these things around the edges of beds or along walkways or in a guild around trees, bushes, and they do work so well together. So many of these plants do to companion plant together and just benefit everything as a whole. So I think that it's worth considering some of the other reasons you might want to grow a plant other than just food. Get the old seed catalog out, start looking through, seeing what some of them benefits are, some of those plants besides just food. And if you can kill two birds with one stone, if it can be food and something else beneficial or two or three things, all the
Yeah,
better. All the better.
I
So
should have put the link in here for this. There's a catalog called Strictly Medicinal, and it's a seed
mhm.
company. And oftentimes in their catalog, they talk about uh, the way the plant looks, but also all of its uses, which is
Yeah.
really handy when you're looking through. If this is kind of your goal on your homestead, is using things for multiple
Yeah.
purposes.
Yeah, definitely soil health, fertilizers, things like that, natural. And these are all things I think a lot about because I'm trying to really function stack those guilds and just get all the benefits from every plant. There are some plants I plant with the sole purpose of just that's providing that type of food, no other real benefits. But I try to think, okay, what all can I get from that when I plant that? Because like I said, I just love especially when you're limited on space, you try to get the most benefit from everything that you can. So, and you can do that
Stuff
with
it all
plants.
in.
You can definitely do plants, trees, everything. So I think that wraps it up unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, I think that's all I have on that. There's
Well, until
obviously
next,
way more plants.
yeah,
So
we're just dropping the bucket here and tip of the iceberg. So yeah, just do some research and think about it. If there's a plant you really that you really like that you want to grow, look at maybe just do some searching on it and see if there's some other things that plant can be used for because you might discover some really unique and kind of special purposes of that plant that you never knew before. And you can have a lot of fun with that. So I think that's it. Until next time, folks, happy homesteading. God bless.
and grow where you're planted.